Come on, kid, you can do it. Don't think. Just do it.
Jesus, Houston, not that fast.
That's it, kid. That's it.
All right, let's go.
I've been waiting a long time to run a Top Gun clip on this show. I have a confession to make. One of my favorite movies in the past few years was Top Gun Maverick. And in fact, one of my favorite franchises of all time is the Top Gun franchise. And one of the major reasons are the fighter jets. I'm a bit of a nerd in that regard. The 1986 original Top Gun used real F-14A Tomcats, which were the top of the line at the time. 2022's Top Gun Maverick also used an F-14. You got to watch the movie to understand why. But the movies mainly used F-18 Super Hornets, which were not the most advanced contemporary aircraft. F-22 Raptors and F-35 Lightning IIs were both more advanced and more sophisticated when the movie was made. But the F-18s were used because of film constraints and other nerdy and pedantic reasons that my executive producer really asked me not to spend any time talking to you about. However, let's get back to the F-35. It's now playing a starring role in the fallout from tensions that President Trump has fomented with American allies. It's putting a vital aspect of NATO's strategy for air power dominance into the danger zone. See what I did there? Signaling a shift away from reliance on the United States to lead that alliance. Let's go back to 2001, when Lockheed Martin won a contract to develop an aircraft as part of the Joint Strike Fighter program. The U.S.-led program was basically meant to replace a wide array of older fighter aircraft that U.S. allies separately used with one single ultra-advanced aircraft. It was hoped that this would also eventually enhance interoperability within NATO. What came out of that project was the F-35 Lightning II, which officially debuted in 2015. It has Air Force, Marine, and Navy variants, each with different landing and takeoff capabilities. But simply put, the F-35 is a very, very cool and extremely sophisticated aircraft. It's the most advanced and dominant aircraft ever made, and it's planned to remain in service until 2070. Now, the Joint Strike Fighter and F-35 programs currently include the United States and 19 other nations, 14 NATO nations and 5 non-NATO nations, Singapore, South Korea, Japan, Australia, and Israel. More nations, including NATO ally Portugal, are lining up to acquire F-35s as well. However, President Trump's anti-NATO rhetoric and perceived cozying up to Russia are throwing these important and highly lucrative orders into question, with fears growing about America's reliability as a defense partner. These worries are not just that the U.S. may decide not to defend an ally, but somehow constrain or halt vital software upgrades or cut off access to parts. In March, Portugal's defense minister pointed to the, quote, recent U.S. stance in the context of NATO as a factor in rethinking its order, adding, quote, the world has changed, and this ally of ours could bring limitations to use. In Canada, the situation is even more serious. There's now open debate in Canada about its role in the F-35 program. Prime Minister Mark Carney is calling for a review of his country's purchase of 88 of these F-35 jets, a contract that's worth more than $13 billion. And remember, Canada has been a partner in developing the aircraft since the start, and it's made significant investments already. I want to talk about this more with Margaret Kozel. She's an associate professor of international affairs and a director of graduate studies at the Georgia Institute of Technology. Margaret's research explores the relationships between technology, strategy, and governance. She's written many books and publications on the subject. Margaret, thank you for being with us. This is not, and it's kind of a plain conversation. I've tried to make it a little nerdy and plain-like, but the implications are much bigger, both for America's military and industrial complex and for NATO and mutual defense. Talk to me about what the story is.
Well, first of all, thank you. And I'm ready to nerd out as well. We can start talking about the technology requirements and all of that. But I suspect many of your viewers will not be as interested. Yeah, so as we are seeing, and as you laid out really well, there are these signals coming from some of our best, if not the best allies that we have had historically, that they are rethinking what they may be pursuing in terms of their air power. Now, it is unquestionable that the F-35 is the best current airframe current fighter plane available for a number of reasons. So we've heard some suggestions that they might be looking to other types of aircraft from other states. In the end, I suspect if they make that first investment, they are unlikely to move from that to something else.
So one of the concerns, you heard the Portuguese mention it, I don't know whether it's conspiracy theory or it's real, but this idea, they used to say that the danger is that these things come with a kill switch, that somehow America can just decide to make other people's planes inoperable. I've heard that that's not really the case. It's just that these airplanes do require software updates. They're very sophisticated software updates. And could a fight in 10 years, an argument between Canada and the U.S., turn into a you're not getting your software update?
So I would not characterize it as a conspiracy theory. I would characterize it as something that previously had never been thought about.
Right.
Previously, that was just not something that anyone could even imagine that we would get to. So in that sense, it illustrates how the current administration has undermined the confidence in the United States. And that effectively weakens us.
So there are alternatives. Here's the problem. If you buy this plane, it's supposed to work till 2070. So this is your moment to do something about this. Canada goes and looks for another plane. There's something called a JAS-39 Gripen by Saab. But as you said, nothing comes close to an F-35. And then there's this issue of interoperability, right? The idea that NATO planes can land on other people's fields and take off from other people's carriers and things like that. Tell me how big a deal it is if any of these countries decide they're going with some other option.
So it is not a end-all situation. It will make things much more difficult. And ultimately, these states, under the alliance are going to continue to work together. Ultimately, these are likely to continue to be really strong relationships, especially the military relationships one-on-one. Really, this is more of a politics issue.
Right.
And again, I'm stressing this, which is sometimes seen as less of a material thing. But it is this confidence in the United States. And when we are dealing in negotiations, when we are dealing with, who to support internally and externally, having that confidence in the United States is critical and has been critical for the United States. So if we want to continue to advance and extol those things which we have felt very seriously about, the positions that we have taken in the past for the good of the world may potentially be imperiled.
You told NPR in March, you said, look, if people start using different planes, it's not going to significantly degrade NATO's capabilities, but you called this a canary in a coal mine.
Correct. Yes, it is, again, it is this first piece of signaling this reduction in the status of the United States. Now it is, as you noted, it is also because the J-35 is the most capable aircraft. So our other allied nations want to have that. And we want them to have that because, again, as you mentioned, this interoperability. We have not just in air power, but in a whole number of different ways that the military acts, both in conflict and outside of conflict. We have made our nation such that we let those states that have expertise, for example, Norway has expertise in the Arctic.
Right.
We want to leverage that. Finland brings expertise in the Arctic that we were training and equipping together before they became a member of NATO. Similarly with Sweden.
Margaret, what a great conversation. Thank you so much, and thanks for being willing to geek out on airplane statistics. Margaret Kozel is an associate professor of international affairs and director of graduate studies at Georgia Tech.